Good afternoon to you. I'm George W. Snook. I flew in the B-24 as an engineer gunner during the war. I entered the war in 1942. I went to Dayton to join the Air Force, and they told me, come back in 2 weeks, we're closed right now. I went home, I was drafted. I was fortunate. I went to Columbus, got my uniforms and clothes. 65 of us went the same day from the railroad station in Ashland, where I was born and reared. Went to Columbus, got our clothes, and then from there we went to Camp Atterbury, Indiana for basic training. They still had wooden rifles, but we done a lot of marching, had all of our shots taken, and took a zillion types of tests. I must have done all right on my tests because in short order they said, we're sending you to Aircraft Mechanics School in Lincoln, Nebraska. And what a wonderful change to go to a place like Lincoln, Nebraska. Civilian school, excellent instructors. The only thing is, the typical Army, they cram into 3 months what normally would be a 6-month course. But I graduated from that, went to Salt Lake City for assignment. They said, we need gunners. If you graduate and start flying, you get 50% over base pay. Being in for the short haul, I said, well, let's go for the money. So I ended up in Windover Field, and we were in the Rocky Mountains, and across the top of the mountain is words similar to what you see in Hollywood: kill or be killed. That's what you see the first thing in the morning, and that's what you see when you went to bed. We started in with small arms fires, Springfield rifle, and worked ourselves up to 30 caliber machine guns, and finally the 50 caliber machine guns. What a wonderful school. I graduated out of there, went back to Salt Lake City, and there they sent us to Boise, Idaho for assignment. That's where 10 of us came together to form our crew. The pilot was Captain Williams. He was from Florida. Co-pilot Doug was from Arkansas. The navigator was from Texas. The bombardier was a Brooklynite. 2 of us from Ohio. And the radio operator is from New York. And then we had a tail gunner from Louisiana and another one from North Carolina. A typical mix of people that got together to form a crew and become one. We trained in Pocatello, Idaho, and that's the first time that I flew in the ball turret gunner, the first and only time. I said, that's not for me. You get down in there in the B-24, your crew's got to drop you down, bring you back up. You can't see your airplane. And I said, that's the only time I ever flew. It was in a training flight when we were shooting air-to-ground fire. And after we went through all of our training, we got notice that 3 of us, our crews, were going to Sioux City, Iowa, where 3 training crews had been lost, and we joined the 445th, the 703rd Bomb Squadron, where Jimmy Stewart was our CO. We continued training every day, and finally, they must assume we were in good shape because they sent us back to Lincoln, Nebraska. It was in November. I said, well, which way are we going, north or south? They issued machetes, so we knew we were heading south. We island hopped all the way down across the islands to South America. From there across to Africa, then up to Marrakech, where we stayed a couple days. My only memory of Marrakech is the haves and have-nots. The have-nots ate our garbage that we threw out in the garbage cans, and the kids and the wives ate it. They come and got it, so they had food to take home for the rest of their family. We flew into England, 13 days from States to England. As we approached the continent, the pilot and the navigator got into a discussion of where we were. After a short period of time, I finally said, Mac, we got about 15 more minutes of fuel for make a decision. So, seen an airfield down there. It was an English airport. He went Mayday with it, and they said, come on in. We landed, and we weren't the only one. There was a couple more B-24s landed there too. Next morning, we took off for Tivenham, and it took roughly about 20 minutes. We were in our base. The ground crew had been there for 2 weeks. Everything was running fairly normal, and let me say this, the ground crew that we had on our B-24 just done a super job under lousy conditions someday. But anyhow, on December 13th, 1943, I made my first mission over the continent to Kiel, and then that's when the fighters, the P-51s and 47s, would take you to the channel and wave goodbye. That's all the gas they had. And so, used to say, did you see enemy fighters? My standard answer was, hell yes. We seen enemy fighters from our second mission on. It became old hat for us to fight the 109s and Ju-88s that the Germans had. But let me tell you about one mission I had. And this is an actual picture that I took after the mission. It was my 13th mission on February the 24th, 1945. We were coming off the target at Nuremberg, and as we left the target, we took an 88 shell right up through the bomb bay, underneath my feet, missed the radio operator, and blew a hole out through the side. The picture there is Sergeant Murray. He was our crew chief with his head out. When we got down back to the English Channel, got down less than 10,000 feet, I got out and surveyed the damage. Hydraulic lines all to the main wheels was cut. Our communications was cut. I carried a pair of pliers and screwdrivers. I took a pair of pliers and pinched off all the hydraulic lines that went to the main wheels. We had accumulated pressure enough for brakes and flaps one time. So I cranked the main wheel down after the radio operator had fired a red flare to give us preferential landing. I cranked the main wheel down 25 turns, and the waist gunner gives me a thumbs up. It was down and locked. I threw out the nose wheel. It was big and heavy, and I weighed about 130 some pounds. It would not lock. So I came back and told the pilot, when we were on the ground, it was Captain Williams. When we were flying, it was Mac. I said, Mac, we got a problem. As soon as you put any weight on that nose wheel, it's going to collapse. He ordered everyone to the tail. He brought that 9 yanks and a jerk in, nose high, drug it all the way down the runway. When he turned off toward our hard stand, it collapsed, which I knew it would. Everyone crawled out. A couple of the guys got down and kissed the ground. First guy back to greet us was our squadron commander, Jimmy Stewart, to make sure we were all right. The old story goes, if you can walk away from one, it's a good landing, and that's what I like to think. It was a good landing we made that day.